You guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, you need to. It's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to Mimesis, a podcast about all the twisted ways that art and life imitate each other. I'm Stacey Rourke.
I'm Sandra Sheriff-Zackerly.
And I'm Janell Rhiannon.
Janell is our special guest today. She has a very fun topic for us, but I'm going to give her a minute to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about herself, because she's a dear friend of mine and she's freaking amazing. So Janell, tell everyone why they need to love you as much as I do.
Oh, you're so sweet, Stacey. So sweet. I am the author of a series called the Homeric Chronicles, and it is a Trojan War era retelling. So it covers about 30 years prior to the Trojan War and the time period after the war. So I have 3 books so far. The 4th one is the one I'm working on. I'm going to go all the way through the Odyssey, basically. And
Amazing.
I also have, I have a Greek mythology podcast called Greek Mythology Retold. And I put a lot of my research on there. That's where I started. So got those 2 things.
Fun.
I'm Greek mythology on the brain, I guess.
And I have to recommend her books. I cannot recommend them highly enough. She is such an eloquent writer, and just her words are so poetic and beautiful that absolutely check her out.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're shy, all of us. Oh, stop it.
But keep going.
That's a hard thing, right? Like, somebody likes your work, you're like, oh great, oh no, it's kind of embarrassing.
It is. It's hard taking compliments.
Yes, I've done interviews where people want me to talk about my work, and I can talk about my work, but then they ask me one question about myself, and it's just like the wheels of my brain just grind to a stop, and I'm like, whoa, what?
Right. Well, I appreciate that. It's been a long time working on this series, and so
all good things. All good
Oh,
things.
yeah.
Okay,
You're
so
doing
we're
it.
gonna. What was that?
I said you're doing it.
Yeah, you're doing the damn thing.
Uh-huh.
doing a damn thing.
Or doing the damn thing. All right, we will get into her topic in just a minute. But before we do, I told you guys I had to do this. I have to fix a little flub up that I made during our Stranger Things episode. And I'm kicking myself as a fan of the show. I can't believe I did this. I called the jerk, Jock. I called him Will, and we know that's not Will.
Yeah.
Will is the main character that, has been to the Upside Down. He's been to hell and back, and he's just a sweet, tender heart character that we love so much. Will is not the Jock. His name is Jason. Jason is the jerk. And I should know that because it's my husband's name. I should know that. But so anyways, to all of our Stranger Things fans, I'm very sorry I messed that up. But have you watched the last 2 episodes of season 4?
I haven't even watched season 4.
Me either. I just started season 2. I literally binged the first season because I heard it. Maybe I heard it from your podcast or
Possibly,
something,
because it's so good.
And I was like, okay, I gotta just try this because I hate scary things. I am a scaredy cat.
Oh, season 3, I had to stop because it scared me.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the couch with my dogs, and I had the blanket over my head, and that thing started coming out of the wall, and I was like, ah! My dog's like, oh my god! And I was like, ah!
Okay, so I will say for the first 3 seasons of Stranger Things that I liked it, but Stranger Things season 4 made me a mega fan. It's just otherworldly amazing. So
Wow.
highly recommend that you stick it out for a couple months.
I will.
I didn't like season 1. Like, I liked it, but I didn't really get into it. And then season 2 happened. I was like, yes. Then season 3, and I got too scared. And I had to like shelf it for a minute.
Season 4 is chef kiss perfection. And the character of Eddie, you're going to fall in love with them. Because we talked about Sandy. He's based on Damien Eccles of the West Memphis 3. And they made him just such an amazing character. And that's just, we did so much research on the West Memphis 3 that it just makes me love that character even more. So
That's cool. I'm looking forward to finishing this series.
You absolutely need to. Okay, now down to business. Miss Janell, what do you have in store for us today?
Well, we were looking at talking about the movie Troy, because it's the movie that I love to hate. I love to love it, and then I love to hate it, because there are things that...
I have never seen this movie.
You've never seen Troy? Oh, Brad Pitt is...
Gosh. That is really... It's a good one. And I think that for people who haven't read the Iliad, it fulfills everything that they want. For those of us who have, it fulfilled some stuff and it left a lot of things wanting. And that's why I love to hate it.
Awesome. Well, I am excited to dig in and learn all the dirt about this. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So you haven't watched it, but Stacey, have you seen it?
I have multiple times. Yes.
Multiple times. Probably one of the funniest stills that I ever saw of that was Brad Pitt talking on his cell phone out on the beach.
Have you seen the one where there's a plane flying behind him? Because
no, I didn't see that one.
Messed up.
Yeah. I think it's a scene from the movie that they didn't cut it out, and there's a plane that flies over.
Oh my God! Now I was just rewatching it, so I have to do it again.
Look for an airplane.
Watch for that. Funny. Sort of like the Game of Thrones thing when they left the Starbucks cup on the table.
Yes.
And some people
when you want the Iron Throne, but you have to stop for a coffee first.
Right? Exactly. On your dragon. A drive-through for dragons only. Right? Clearance 500 feet. Okay.
Yes. That's a really tall building.
Wingspan 1,000 feet. Okay. I got you.
That would be amazing.
Right? But so it's such a good movie for the setting. Let's talk about all the things that we love about this movie. You said Brad Pitt. I loved Brad Pitt as Achilles.
Yes.
I really did. I thought he was well cast for especially what people expect Achilles to look like. I think that Achilles would have been bigger. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I could see that. He bulked up for the role, but Brad Pitt by nature is a rather skinny dude.
Yeah.
Right. I remember that. There's a lot of controversy about that. So we can start with I loved Brad Pitt. And then when you read the Iliad, there's a scene in the Iliad, and this is why I think Brad Pitt, this is why I think Achilles was a bigger guy. So in the movie, you see him talking to a character called Ajax. And so there's 2 Ajaxes. There's Ajax, the older and the younger, the greater and the lesser. And the older Ajax is Ajax of Telamon. And he was a really big guy. He was huge. And when Achilles lost his armor, we can get into that later, but he was lamenting the fact that he didn't have his armor anymore, and that the only person's armor who he could fit in would be Ajax. But Ajax was out on the field fighting, so he wasn't able to even borrow some armor. So that tells me that if Ajax is so huge, that Achilles would also have to be as big as Ajax if that's the only guy's armor that he could borrow.
So are we thinking Ajax is like the size of like the mountain from
I was going to say the mountain.
Game of Thrones?
I don't think that big. Like the not that character that they had, that I think that is the guy that plays the mountain that does Boagrius.
Oh, really?
Because he's huge. Did you remember that one?
Yeah.
The king of Thessaly is like, Pelagius! And then Agamemnon's like, Achilles! And then Achilles doesn't show up because he's in the tent with those two ladies doing the thing.
That's exactly how they sounded. That was such a good impression.
And then, I think that Ajax would have been, now your average Greek at that time would have been about, they wouldn't have been over 5'7". So most of the men
Really?
would have been, they would have been
That's
about,
crazy to think.
right. And so we're talking about like the Bronze Age. We're talking like, 3,500 years ago. So they were about like maybe 5'5", 5'6", 5'7". If you were 5'10", you would have been huge. Like that would have been tall. But it had to do with fitting into the rowing, fitting into to be a rower and stuff. So they weren't
I'd
really
fit right
big,
in at 5'5".
giant men. So about like 5'7"-ish. I would
So
have
like
thought,
my husband's height.
yeah, there you go. So I didn't know how tall he was, but yeah, 5'7".
Yeah, Sandy's husband would be a freak among men in that time at 6'4".
Yeah, so 6'4",
Well, he's
I
pushing
think
6'5" now.
Oh, is he wearing big shoes?
No, he's going to the chiropractor.
Oh my gosh, I was just gonna say that. I gained a whole half inch when I went to the chiropractor.
Yeah, he
Did you
gains
really?
like a
I
full
seriously
inch.
did. I did,
Yeah.
because you don't realize that your spine gets compressed.
It gets
and especially
compressed,
as you
yeah.
age. Yes. And so I had gone to another doctor and they measured me and they're like, "Oh, you're 4'10" and a half." And I was like, "What? Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they did it. And then I had to go to another doctor for something else. And then the same thing, like 4'10" and a half. I was like, "What? I gained a half.
grew.
I grew. Oh my God." So that's funny.
Yeah, Sandy, she's even shorter than me.
I am. I know. We were two little peanuts.
We were.
And then like, yeah, peanut one and peanut two. It was all good. It was all good. But I so go back to be like 6'2" or 3 would have been really huge. That would have been a really big guy at that time. So I'm thinking that Ajax and Achilles are probably like that 6'2", 3, 6'4", right in there. Not giants, but just tall. They would have stood head and shoulders above all the average guys. Right?
Okay, that makes sense.
That would, right. And so that's why I think Achilles would have been bigger than Brad Pitt.
Who would you cast in that role if you could cast anybody?
If I could cast anybody, it would have to be I would cast a really big guy. You know who looks like Achilles to me is, I think it's Brock O'Hearn. He's not really known. I've seen him on Instagram.
Hold on, I'm going to Google him.
Yeah. Brock O'Hearn. How about that?
Because whoever this guy is, yes.
Oh, okay. American actor, model, fitness trainer, and producer. You've seen him, Sandy. He's done TikToks that we have shared.
Yeah.
You've seen him.
Yep.
So he's got the mass of hair, and then he's like 6'7", I think. So I feel like, yeah,
he's enormous.
I know. I think I would cast. I would put him as Achilles. I don't know if he's an actor really, but I would do that.
He has a twin brother.
He has a twin brother?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
There's two.
Yeah, his name is Drake O'Hearn.
Is he cute too? Are we editing that part out?
No, it's fine. It's fine. We can leave that in.
Probably.
I was gonna say that my granddaughter's ballet instructor, Fabrice Calmels, is 6'7", and he's the tallest ballet dancer in the world. And
really,
yeah, he's when you're in his presence, when you're a peanut like me, it almost feels like he's double like your size. It's like, dang, tall. So that's what I think of, that people. So it's not like a giant, but you're tall, and that there's a presence that comes with that. So if you're in that middle 6 foot range and you're just walking up on somebody full plated of with your don't think medieval plating, but they have more like leather and bronze, like, I don't want you, they're not beads, like bronze rings or bronze, like rectangles that would be sewn all over the leather as protection.
Okay.
So, but if you're
Yeah.
fully in your garb, your armor, your shield, and you're that tall, that would be scary. Plus, they
It
have
would
the
be so
helmet.
intimidating.
They've got that big helmet with the crest on it, so they would look even taller.
Well,
So
it
if
looks
you're
like
in
you have a push broom on your head. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have one over by my fireplace. So if you were to put on a helmet with a crest and and be in the 6 foot range, you could easily look like you're 7 foot tall.
Yeah, that's
And you would be
intimidating.
that would be very intimidating and very scary if you're the 5'7" dude. You'd be like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Achilles was swift and stronger than everybody else. Right. So yeah, that's what I
Now,
would.
the lore in Troy versus your
Mhm.
books, um, Achilles' genealogy. How close are those two in your books and in Troy?
I have in how close are which two?
Achilles' genealogy is like his.
Oh. His Achilles is they did a decent job. He says at one point that he's the son of Peleus, which he is, who was a king of Phthia, and then his mom is Thetis, the sea nymph. And so they have that scene where he goes down to in the movie where he goes down to the water and his mom is there saying, I'm going to make a shell necklace for you like I did when you were little. And so that's about all we get of his parentage. And
Okay.
that's one of the things that I was a little bit bummed about. Not that the actress that plays her plays his mother is really, she's a beautiful woman. I just imagine in my mind a sea nymph, because she's one of 50 nereids, so there's 50 of them. She has she's one of her 50 sisters, right?
Yeah.
But I don't imagine that they would get age. I imagine that his mom would be a perpetually youthful, like she'd be
Young,
perpetually,
yeah.
I don't know, like
Young and beautiful.
20
like
or 30.
25 stopped aging.
Right.
Yeah.
The only reason I can think that they did that is that one of my beefs with the whole movie is that they really removed any input that the gods may have had, any input that influences from any of the gods.
I did notice that.
Right. So there was nothing. They talked about the gods. They mentioned Poseidon. They mentioned Apollo. There's the desecration of Apollo's temple in that opening scene when they land on the beach of Troy. But there's really no, you don't see any of that. And in the Iliad, the gods are definitely coming down. They're walking among the men during fighting. They're warring with each other and backstabbing each other behind the scenes. But the Iliad, through Homer, we get all of that, and the movie just completely wiped all that off. And so
it just stayed the works of man mostly.
Right. And so it would not have made any sense, since they weren't going that direction, to choose a woman who looked younger than Achilles would have been. Right.
Yeah.
So like, well, how could that be his mom? Like, that's weird. Right.
Right.
And
but it would have made sense.
It would have made sense. Yeah. If you knew that that was a goddess, right, a sea nymph, that she wouldn't age because she was immortal. You know, and anytime we see a goddess represented, like there's that old movie with Armand Asante as Odysseus. Have you guys seen that one?
I'm sure I have. Is that the one that they played in like high schools everywhere for the longest time?
For the longest, because it's the only. It's really the only movie that has ever been made of the Odyssey.
Really?
I've not seen one. They did because they, you know what happens is they mess it up. In my opinion, they mess up the Iliad. They don't get the story right for whatever reason. Well, for a lot of reasons, and then they don't pick it up. So did you see, are you aware of the Netflix series Troy Fall of a City?
No, I
Okay.
didn't see that one.
All right. So that was actually a better take, I think, on the Iliad. They started out pre-Iliad, and they start off with a lot of Paris. And
Okay.
but again, what happened with that one was that there was a lot of oh gosh, within the people who love Greek mythology, like that's their passion. Like they love it. They have their ideas about how the characters are and what they look like. So when you
Oh,
start
okay.
to
Yeah.
change that, and then they cast, there was people had I think it was straight up racist, but people didn't like that they cast Achilles and Patroclus and Zeus as black men. They didn't like that. And so there was a lot of, in the community, a lot of
ridiculous.
hate, right?
Yeah.
But this goes to something that we talked, that I mentioned to you guys earlier before we were recording, about how myths are malleable. So
Absolutely.
they tried something with that series, and I thought that the acting was great, the story was great, and I think that opinion of some people kind of put a damper on that show, which
Yeah.
was really good. And they
Do you know what that makes me think of is a
Hmm.
meme I saw somewhere that said nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans,
Yes.
because every single time anything new comes out, these people that call themselves Star Wars fans just rip it to shreds. In the Obi-Wan series that came out, and I cannot remember the name of the actress. She's a black actress. She plays one of the Inquisitors in the series,
She's
and
awesome.
she was amazing. She was
Yeah.
so talented, but
Right.
there was just horribly racist comments that were made about her. I need to Google her name because she was so good, and I feel bad not
That
knowing her name right
was
off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
she
when
did.
that was, I don't want to give a spoiler for the Kenobi
Right.
show, but when it was revealed like who she was, I was like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, oh my
It's
gosh,
heartbreaking, and she did such a good
Oh,
job. But
I
there was
know.
She did.
Moses Ingram, that's her name. She played Riva.
She was awesome.
Sevendor.
Yes, Riva. Mm-hmm.
Even Ewan McGregor had to make a comment. He had to go public and say that the comments being made about her were disgusting. That it was just gross racist crap. And it's it's the same thing where maybe you have preconceived notions of characters, but please open your mind just a crack. I mean,
Right.
Because we're
geez.
getting the story, and I think
Yes.
that we're getting the story, and
you're getting
so
an actor
I love Star Wars. I didn't understand that whole when she survived the lightsaber thing. That was the only thing I questioned. Like, how'd she do that?
Yeah.
Well, how that happened? That was my question.
How do you do that?
How'd you do that? And so I wasn't sure. I don't know what I missed in the lore or whatever, but I was like, Qui-Gon Jinn didn't survive that. Like, what magical things? So, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like
and
you're taking away from the director who picked the actor for a reason. They're strong. They're gonna make this come to life in the way that they see fit. And most of the time they're freaking right.
Yeah. And
The
she was
only
such a
time
good
that
character.
I have a
She was
problem
so
with
good.
people like taking books to movies is when they don't take the facts that you actually need. Not the
Right.
person, the facts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it was so well cast. That little girl as Leia.
Oh my God,
So,
she was
yes.
so
She was
cute.
so spunky. She was
She's
spunky,
so
spunky.
sassy and so smart, and I just love it. You know what I kept thinking is Billy Lords watching that, knowing that little girl was a tribute to her mom. Like, how could she not watch that and just fall in love with that little girl? Because she was so Leia. It was so cute.
Yeah.
Right? She was so, and then when she finally got her little hair up and her little bun thing
I
at the
know.
end, I was like, oh, there she is, little baby Leia. Little baby Leia. I Oh,
And I know we're going on a tangent and we need to get
That's
back to this, but I have
Okay.
to say this. The fact that Hayden is finally getting the love as Vader that he has
Right.
deserved.
4 years.
Yes.
Yes.
That was all when they did the duel.
Oh
And
my
then when
gosh.
I was just like, oh wow, that was
It was
everything.
so good. It was
Yeah.
so good. Every bit
Right.
of it was so good. And you know what?
Right.
He was given clunky dialogue. Him and Natalie Portman both were given clunky dialogue.
Mhm.
And yeah, it didn't flow. But now in this series, we got to see him embrace being Vader. And it was
Yes.
just
It was amazing.
amazing. I'm
I
so
can't
glad
wait to
he's
watch him
finally.
in Ahsoka.
I know.
Did you see that? I saw that he's going to
Yeah.
be in it. So I was like, oh
Yes.
goodness, I'm ready.
It's going to be so good.
They're doing so many things. And so so I'll bring this back to
Oh, yes. We love a
circle
good
this
segue.
around, right? So everything that they're doing with the Star Wars universe, love it or hate it, the Iliad and the Odyssey, the stories in there are so rich. Has those stories have, if somebody would have taken them on with that level of, let's tell all of the story, let's not leave it out. It's way more than a 3-hour movie. It's more
Okay.
than 8 shows that are an hour long. So what a lot of people
You can make a whole universe of
you can
shows and movies.
all of it. And one of the
Yeah.
things that when I started writing this series, it took me about a year to work out a timeline, because all of the
Okay.
little pieces, everybody is pretty familiar with the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? By Homer.
Mhm.
What they're not familiar with are all of the other writings that we have that were contemporary of Homer. We have fragments, we have there's all kinds of things, and then we have, like, I say things, then we have plays that come in more classical Greek time, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things to draw on, a lot of places and sources that we draw on. And you could have 10 seasons easy of the Iliad.
You
like
could have
10
like a
shows.
Marvel universe
Yep.
of Greek
And-
lore.
Right, you can, and I don't know why they haven't done it. So
We should do it.
Right,
should
they
do
should.
it.
They should do it. And the Troy Fall of a City started to try to do that, but then they stopped it. They changed too many things, and it went nowhere. What they did was they tried to do the Iliad in one season, and again, you left out enough stuff, and it was a little confusing. And then they were supposed to do like the Odyssey, but again, it's too big of a story to just do it in
You
that
need to
period
break
of
it down
time.
in parts.
Yeah, and then you cut out stuff, and then it doesn't make sense, or people who really know the story, or they're like, you missed that. And I'll give you an example.
And then they're
of
not going to
something-
watch it because they're missing
Yes,
stuff.
and I think it
Yeah.
turned off a lot of people, and so they didn't get the support they wanted for, like, Troy Fall of a City. And I think the same thing happened with the movie Troy, which it was beautifully cast. I thought the setting and costumes were just absolutely amazing. And it that's it. Like, we never get to the Odyssey. That's my point. We never get there.
Okay.
And I think it's because people that would support it and clamor for it, we want the next part, that it just goes away, because people get like, ugh,
They're not doing it right, so never
they're
mind.
not doing it right, and so they don't want to do it. They don't want to see any more of that. And it's the
They
same,
want to see everything spelled out.
right? So I'll give you an example of something that they cut out in the movie Troy that I find troubling, because it's a big character. They cut out completely from the movie the character of Hecuba. That's Hector's mother. She and Priam are the king and queen of Troy, and they completely cut her out as a character. She's not there.
Really?
Yep. She's not there. And she plays a very important role in Hector's life. There's a very powerful scene where before Hector goes down to fight with Achilles, she literally pulls her breast out and says like look at this, you know, I nursed you, I'm your mother, like honor this, honor who I am in your life, and don't go out there, don't go down and fight Achilles because you're not going to come back. And even and his dad is like don't do it, and he feels like at this point Hector feels like I have to do it. So by
Hector was the one played by Orlando Bloom, right?
No, that's Paris. So Hector was the one. Hector is played by Eric Bana.
That's right. My gosh, yes. I love him.
Yes. So he's right. So he's great. It's a great cast. But by missing that mother figure, you miss a lot of powerful scenes that let you know who Hector is and what
the connection he has to people.
Right. Yeah. And the social structure that is existing in Troy. So that's missing. So I find that's a bummer.
Okay, now Hector was going down in defense of Paris somehow, wasn't he?
Okay, in the movie.
In the movie he was.
So going back to one of the things I love to hate about the movie is that the movie makes it look like they land on the beach of Troy, which I love the landing of the ships because the prow of the boats, literally you would row them and beach them up on the ship. So that visually, that was all working for me. That was amazing.
Okay.
I see like that initial battle on the beach, and then like a few days later, they're at the walls of Troy. But the Greeks land there. It's like 9 years. They've been fighting for almost 10 years by the time they get to any final battles. By the time we get to the battles that are in the Iliad. So there's almost a 10-year period of time where the Greeks are going around and they're conquering, raping, and pillaging all the surrounding allies of Troy, the islands, everything. There's stories in my books. I write about a specific place, Methemna, which Achilles conquered and did some nasty things there. And Achilles he's really a bad guy.
Really?
His character, he's an anti-hero. He's a tragic hero. I don't even know if he's a hero. He's a lesson in what not to do.
Okay.
Because he does. I mean, he's
a hard guy to root for.
He's when you feel sorry for him, like you do feel sorry for him, but he's really not a nice person.
Okay.
And war. By the time we get to the wartime, and he does a lot of heinous things, like the princess in Methemna, he stones her to death. He uses her, he gets her, he sees her when they're fighting, he sees this woman up on the ramparts of Methemna, and he's like, okay, I'll figure out a way to get into the city. And he sends a messenger, somehow gets her attention. She meets him secretly. He has sex with her and promises that he'll marry her if she'll open the gate from the inside. And that's the fragment that we have of that story. And I want to say I read that from Dr. Martine Kuipers. I have a link for it somewhere. But so we have that story. And then when he opens, she does all of that, and then he stones her to death because he had no intention of doing anything. He had no intention.
He was just using her.
He was using her. So that's Achilles. But we don't see those stories.
No, right? He's always made off to be a hero.
Right. He's made out to be Brad Pitt. And we also see Hector as this glorified hero, but Hector was just as bloodthirsty. So like when you read the Iliad, there's the scene where, because Hector is the one that kills Patroclus, and he has Patroclus bent over his knee in the Iliad with his knife ready to cut his throat, and he had in his mind he was going to drag Patroclus' body around behind his chariot. So he was going to do all the ugly, nasty things to Patroclus that Achilles eventually does to him.
Really?
And yeah. Oh, Hector is just as
What stopped Hector from doing it?
I want to say it was Athena. One of the gods stepped in. I can't remember. I should know that off the top of my head.
That's my dog's name. So when you said that, I was like, did she bark? Did she need to go outside?
So, and he was stopped. I want to say a god intervened, and
Okay.
then the Greeks were able to get Patroclus' body, because they knew if they didn't bring Patroclus' body back, that Achilles would lose a nut. He would just like lose it, and Achilles might not fight for them. Like you let Patroclus, and remember, Patroclus sneaks off, doesn't he? Well, he doesn't sneak off. That's the other thing, is Achilles actually knows that Patroclus is fighting, and because he gives him his armor and stuff, and all the Greeks know that it's Achilles. All the Greeks know that it's Patroclus as well. So they make it in the movie seem like nobody knew. We thought it was you, but everybody knew, because in the Iliad, after Patroclus is all dressed up in Achilles' armor to go fight, Achilles comes and addresses his men. So they see Achilles, so they know that he's not the one wearing the armor. And that's a big
So
confusion.
it wasn't any kind of deception.
Not among themselves, but it was definitely a deception for the Trojans, because they wouldn't know. They would know Achilles by his armor. Well, again, which means that Patroclus has to be a big guy too, if he's wearing Achilles' armor.
Because you don't want it to look like little brothers wearing big brother's clothing. That's not going to give you the...
If you're 6'3", your clothes are not going to fit on a dude that's 5'7". No. It's obviously they're going to be too big. So and your armor, even though they have buckles, right? They could strap it on there. It would still be too long, like, because your torso, and you can't like cinch it up because it's hard leather and bronze, right? So Patroclus have to be a big guy too.
Yeah. There's just these random big dudes.
Mm-hmm. Random big dudes. And I think that sometimes people forget that the war was lasting 10 years. And I know fans of Song of Achilles, that book really makes them out to be teenagers. And you sort of keep that young teenage, early 20 boyish energy, but they would have been hardened war veterans at this point, because you're fighting for about 10 years. You're conquering, raping, pillaging, camping.
You've seen some shit and you can't come back from it at that point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they have, at the end of 10 years, they have
scars,
camp,
limbs
we
missing.
would call them camp whores.
Yeah.
Right. They've conquered women. They've taken women as prizes. So they've got women they've enslaved, having babies. I mean, they're not stopping babies from happening. So they're having illegitimate, not by their wives back home in Greece. So that would be like their legitimate wife, right? So they're just they're have concubines basically, and they're raping them, all kinds of not nice things, right? And so that's all happening in the Greek camp, all of that, but we don't see any of that. Like, who's doing all the cooking and cleaning and mending and stuff?
Right.
Did they have their female concubines that were having to do this stuff for them? That they're kept against their will, and they're having to do like the sewing and the cooking.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's horrific,
right? But we don't see any of that, and I do add some of that in my book. When I'm writing,
I think you need to, because it's real, and don't glamorize what was really happening there.
Right. And I do, and I have I think I gave Menelaus a illegitimate child with a woman whose tent he frequented. So when you're in that, and it's kind of dicey, because you don't want to romanticize it, but I think as a woman in that position 3,500 years ago, if there was a warrior who was at least kindish to you, that was a better option to have somebody
Just
take a
one and not many.
favor you, so that maybe that
Yeah.
kept other men away from you, right?
Yeah.
So you're taking the lesser of two evils, and I think there's a lot
in
of
those
that.
moments of survival, you got to do what you got to do. And if,
Right.
like you said,
we-
bonding with this one is what's going to keep you safe, then
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then you do that. So I touch on some of that. I don't really go deep into that, but we don't see that at all in the movie Troy.
no,
We
no,
don't
no.
see any of that.
Now, Achilles has a love story in
He
Troy.
does. Yeah, he does. And he does in the Iliad too. And that brings to so in the movie Troy, they have the character of Briseis. And Briseis, they have her as a priestess of Apollo, and that she's a Trojan, but she's actually not.
Okay.
Briseis comes from Pedasus, which is south, that area is south of Troy. And she was married to the prince of Lyrnessus. And Lyrnessus is a town that Achilles conquered, and then took her, and that he kidnapped. He took her as a prize. And so that's how she comes into being. And he takes her probably a couple years of, when I was looking at the timeline of everything. So he has her for a couple of years. Again, the movie Troy, we get like that the whole Trojan War was 3 weeks long. That's really what it feels like, right? But it was years and years and years up to the final days of the final battles when Troy was able to be conquered by the Greeks. And
so this woman didn't necessarily fall in love with him, but it was that same kind of thing of
a lesser of two evils.
Yes.
And so the only way Achilles calls her in the Iliad, he said she's one of the, why he's so mad with Agamemnon is that, well, there's a couple of, well, I'll go back into the mad with Agamemnon, but she's been with Achilles for a while now. And in my book, I was like, well, how could, well, I need to back up again. He calls her the wife of his heart. And he makes a couple of references to her in that capacity. And Patroclus also mentions to her, and this is all in the Iliad, that if Achilles won't marry you, that like I will. Like I'll make sure that when we get back home to Phthia, that he makes you his proper wife. So he says that in the Iliad. So that's the basis for there being a love story with Briseis and Achilles. And as I mentioned, that myth is malleable. You could take those tidbits that we have and you can build a story in that between them, which is what I did. And Briseis, I thought the only way that could work is that he can't rape her. And I didn't want to write a story where a woman falls in love with the man who rapes her.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I couldn't write that.
No.
So I was like, and why would she be different from the other women that he took as war prizes? Right. So it would have to be different because he doesn't rape her for whatever for some reason. He's just hit his limit in his own mind and his own soul. Because by the time he conquers Lyrnessus, he's already been doing this for years. So he's starting to the number of people that he's killed. I mean, it's starting to get to him. I think we often, and we don't depict ancient warriors as having any kind of PTSD, having any trauma. It's almost like, we just sort of gloss over that. But I don't think anybody who has to go through that kind of fighting and survival and trauma, and mind you, this is all hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, definitely would have PTSD.
You think about like modern day soldiers, and we don't think twice about if they say they have PTSD. We're like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't a new development. It's just now that it has a name and we understand what it is.
Right.
You know, back then they were suffering the same thing. There just wasn't a name for it quite yet.
Yeah. Like anybody, like even those raped and whatnot, they get PTSD from the trauma.
Yes.
Right. Right. And so I just think of the amount of trauma that was going around in the Greek camp and even in Troy,
Everybody.
because men are leaving, they're fighting. There's that constant tension of the Greeks aren't going away. They're not going away. And, you know, you're sending out, not search parties, but you're sending out people to like spy on each other and, you know, assess what's happening, and the fear that would have surrounded the area of Troy, because Troy did have magical walls in the Iliad. Like the walls were built by Poseidon and Apollo because they'd been punished by Zeus, and so they had to go down and work for King Laomedon, who was King Priam's father. So there's a whole, and the Trojan War that we see in the Troy, that's the second Trojan War. I didn't know if you knew that. There's 2 Trojan Wars.
Yeah, I didn't.
The first Trojan War was Heracles came and conquered the city and took King Priam's younger sister. I don't know if she was younger. I think she was younger. Yeah. So Heracles takes Hesione and eventually gives her to Telamon, his general. And Telamon, and so she's a Trojan princess that gets taken back to Greece, and she's living with Telamon and as his concubine. And Telamon and Hesione have a child named Teucer, and Teucer and Ajax, that really tall guy, they're half brothers then. So they go to Troy to fight for the Greeks.
And that was the first Trojan War.
And that's the first Trojan War, which is Hesione, the kidnapped princess. She's the one that's held by the rock. She's held on the rocks, and the monster has to come and eat her.
Okay.
And then Heracles saves her and then takes her. So that's
okay.
So we're talking about and that's important when you that's important for Paris's story. So we start getting into all the layers of all the stories, and why a movie like Troy, when you cut out so much stuff, you have to invent things that sometimes don't make sense, or that people
in shortened timelines
we don't like it, right?
Yeah,
they cut the gods completely out of it, and that's
completely out of it.
You can't really with Greek mythology, because that's a big part rooted in it is the gods,
right? The entire story of the whole war starts because of the gods and visions. When Hecuba was pregnant with Paris, that's when she had the vision that her child would basically bring the doom of Troy. So a couple of versions where she gives birth to a burning log. That's one of them. And then that's interpreted as the child that you're going to give birth to has to be killed because he is going to bring about the doom of Troy. That's the prophecy. Which is why Paris, then King Priam, takes, and if you can, this is the other thing that I can't, they cut Hecuba out of the movie Troy, and in Troy Fall of the City they do have her in there, but Hecuba and Priam are all lovey-dovey, and that made zero sense to me as a mom. I was like, if my husband ripped my newborn baby from my breast, I would hate him for the rest of my days.
Yeah.
I would be thinking about ways to kill his dumb ass.
Every day.
I mean, right? I just feel like that makes sense. So I think that a relationship between a husband and wife, even though because the husband had to choose, King Priam chose to be a king over being a husband. Like, he made a choice.
Yeah.
So he takes the newborn baby from his wife, gives it to the sheep herder or the bull herder, and then he's tasked with taking the child and exposing it at the foot of Mount Ida and so it could die. And then of course he doesn't. He takes Paris and fosters Paris as his and that's the big reveal once Paris is grown up, right? And then, oh, ta-da, your son who you thought was dead has returned. But as a husband and wife, I think that would rip a marriage apart.
Yeah, you wouldn't
I
be
don't even-
lovey-dovey.
Right? I don't care if Apollo told you to. I hate you now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you go ahead and have all your fucking concubines. Go ahead. See if I care.
You
Enjoy
Right?
yourself.
Enjoy yourself.
I
don't
hope
even-
it burns when you pee. That's
Right? It falls off. Hope you just break it off inside of one of them. Go ahead. I don't even care.
enjoy yourself, and I hope it hurts.
Right? So and
Yeah.
Hecuba and Priam have like 50 sons. Like there's 50 children. I don't know if it's 50 sons,
Oh
but they have
my
50
gosh.
kids. So there's a lot of kids that they have. So she's like perpetually pregnant, but some of those kids are also from concubines. So he has a whole he ends up with a slew of women, right? So there's a lot of half brothers to Hector and Paris. And those are the two primary ones that we know.
Wow.
Right?
Now,
I
what
don't-
did you think of the way that they depicted the whole Helen of Troy aspect of it? And the eyebrows went up. You have strong feelings about it.
That's one of those things that's magical. So I'll talk about Helen. I'm gonna go back to Paris. So
Okay.
while Paris is not in the city, when he doesn't know who he is, when he still thinks he's a sheep herder or bull herder, right? That's when the three goddesses come to him, and they ask him about, which one of us is the fairest, and he's old enough to be considered a judge of women, so he's not a little boy, because they didn't go to a little boy and go, which one of us is the most fairest of, who's the most beautiful, right?
Yeah.
A little boy doesn't. So he's a man. He's man enough, right?
Yeah.
Who's more beautiful? And Aphrodite tricks him with, I promise, you can have the most beautiful woman in the world for your wife. Now, mind you, Paris is already married to Oenone, who is a wood nymph. And he
they
has
left that out of the movie.
Absolutely, they left that out, and they left it out of the Troy Fall of a City too. And he has a child with her, Corythus. I know, he has a child with her. And so to see all these little tidbits, like this could just be a total Netflix series. You just go off of Homer, just go off of the books, and then all the little it's this drama, it's complete tragedy and drama, and love you till I hate you, and then I wish you were dead. Romance,
love to hate you, the whole
love
thing.
to hate you, the whole thing. So and that's important, because when he goes back to Troy, he leaves his wife behind and his son that he had with her. And he goes back to Troy as a grown-ass man. So he's not the young, skinny Orlando Bloom either. He's like, by the time the Trojan War starts, Hector's like 40. He's the same age as Agamemnon.
Okay.
And Paris is the second son. So he's a few years younger than Hector. There's not a bunch of kids in between Hector and Paris and Paris. So they're
he's
men.
like late 30s at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So they're men.
Yeah.
And he goes, and this is why it's important to know the first Trojan War. And like, and I'm gonna wrap it all up for you. And this is why I love to hate the movie Troy. So in the movie Troy, they have a feast where Paris and Hector go to they're visiting Menelaus in Sparta, and they're talking economics and blah blah blah, right? And then that's where he meets Helen. But Paris is actually sent by his father to go check on, visit, see if Paris can get his aunt Hesione to come back to Troy, that he doesn't want. She's still a Trojan princess, and she's out there, she's in Greece, and let's get her back. So Paris actually had a mission from his father. That's why he goes to Greece. And then he comes around to Sparta because he's already been promised Helen. And the idea that Aphrodite is making all of this happen. Aphrodite is doing what she needs to do to make her promise, to make good on her promise that she made to Paris. Helen's not even born yet when Paris is a man.
Oh.
She's not
Weird.
born yet. And that's the other thing is like, and here's why I say she can't be born yet. Because the Golden Apple story is a story that happens when Achilles' parents got married. It's their wedding. It's their wedding that the goddess Eris was not invited to. The other Greek gods were at this wedding, and they were in disguise, moving around among the mortals. And Eris pops in. She throws that golden apple that says "to the fairest," and that's the apple that goes to Paris. So just right there, that tells you that Paris is grown. Achilles isn't even born yet.
Oh.
Think about that. That's the apple that goes to the goddesses. Go, well, who, we're going to go find the judge. And there's a whole story about why Paris is the judge. So Paris, Orlando Bloom's character, right? He is at least 15 years older than Achilles.
Oh,
because
geez.
Achilles hasn't been
wow.
born yet. It's the marriage feast, and let's just say that they had a child out of wedlock, that they weren't married yet. Achilles would still be a baby. Achilles wasn't a little boy running around at Peleus and Thetis's wedding. That's not even
how that
there.
went.
So when I look at things like that, you start to realize, wait a minute, that number one, if it doesn't make sense if we want to make everybody in their 20s.
Yeah.
Everybody can't be in their 20s. Some people are middle-aged, and some people are young, and some people haven't been born yet.
Right.
So Achilles
because they make Paris look younger than Hector or Achilles. He looks like just a kid.
Yeah, and Paris is older than Achilles.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
Orlando Bloom doesn't age.
No.
Yeah,
So-
that's true.
I saw Orlando Bloom in a play in London a few years back.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Awesome.
and we saw his naked booty.
Oh, congratulations.
No, it was
fun.
really, I know. It was like, that was unexpected. Ooh, it was
That was
it was an
nice.
intense play. It was in a small little theater in the round kind of situation, but it was interesting to see him. He was very good. He was a great actor. And then we saw him came out on the side of the theater, and we, got to like shake hands kind of a thing. But anyway,
Was he wearing
we didn't-
pants then?
He was wearing his pants, but you didn't get to see his naked booty. And his character was an atrocious character in the play. I don't
Really?
even remember the story. I do remember the naked booty.
I don't remember
all-
the story,
Why
but
is
I
that?
remember
That's
his
all I
butt.
can remember. I know. I'm sorry, Orlando Bloom, if you ever hear about that. But the play was great. I liked it at the time, but your booty's all I remember. Sorry about that. Anyway.
That booty fine.
It was fine. It's some fine booty. Okay. I won't go on and on about that. But it was good. It was peachy. It was peachy. But yeah,
He's got
so
that apple bottom.
he does. Oh, he did. It was good. I'm so glad we're not putting the video of this out, because I think my eyes just went everywhere right now.
They did. It was glorious. For those of us that saw it, it was great. And you're
so
blushing
good.
quite a bit too, which is pretty cute.
So good. Ooh. But as far as casting, I didn't like that casting. I really like Orlando Bloom, but I didn't like him as Paris, because they always make Paris too young. Except
Yeah.
for Troy Fall of the City, they made him like a man, like full on chest hair, and he's like grown. He's grown, like middle 30s, like grown. He's grown. So, but
Orlando's a good actor, but this
he's a
wasn't
great
the part for him.
actor. He was a great actor, and he is a great actor. We're not putting the words on him, but he is. I just didn't like him. That was a character I didn't care for the casting.
Yeah.
So I don't think that Helen was born yet either, because Aphrodite had to make sure that Helen got created. 'Cause
Okay.
she had promised the most beautiful woman in the world, right? So that was that, and then so I tied that story to Zeus raping Leda, and Leda is Helen's mother. Leda is the mother of Clytemnestra, Helen, Castor, and Pollux. So there's that story where she had 4 eggs, and then they all hatch, and each kid pops out. But that doesn't make any sense either, because Castor and Pollux rescue Helen from her first kidnapping. She was kidnapped by Theseus of Athens, and he took her because he wanted a child of Zeus as his wife. And so her brothers, Castor and Pollux, go and make war on Athens. And it makes no sense to me. Like, well, she's a pubescent girl when she gets kidnapped. She's about 11 or 12.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense that her brothers would be 11 or 12, like riding up, like making war on and kicking ass on all these soldiers in Athens. And
right.
It makes zero sense.
They're
like
boys.
Right. No. So the idea that they all came out of, so this is, again, myths are malleable. You could take that myth if you want to and run with it, but it doesn't make any sense to me when I tried to piece all the parts of the stories that we know of, all the characters that feed into the major Trojan War era story that we know, right? So Castor and Pollux have to be older, which then when I looked at that, then Clytemnestra is going to be next, and then Helen has to be younger than Clytemnestra, because Clytemnestra marries Agamemnon first, and then her father makes the deal with Helen to be with Menelaus. And it makes sense when, after the kidnapping the first time, her dad is like, okay, Sparta is not going to be safe if Helen isn't married. And then how do we choose? And then you have the whole thing about all the suitors descend on Sparta, but he's not having the suitors descend on a 12-year-old girl. No. So that there's time has to pass. And for all these things to transpire, that means that Helen, she's younger, but so when Paris finally comes around, she's already a married woman with a child when he comes around to Sparta. So she leaves her daughter Hermione behind with Menelaus.
It's fine. She goes off to Hogwarts. She'll be okay.
Right? I know. So a lot of people, I wonder if J.K. Rowling has to have named her after that. Because how many people say Hermione? That's like a funny, right? I named my cat.
I can think of 2.
Right? Oh, what's the other one?
The both of them that you've mentioned here today.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, there's another one? I didn't know that. Yeah.
No, there's Harry Potter, and then there's this one. That's it.
Yeah. So now this goes back to when you asked me about Helen. So I thought, well, what would make a woman leave a child behind? Like, how miserable would you have to be as a married woman to leave your baby?
Yeah.
Pretty miserable. Right?
I couldn't do it.
Right? I don't think I could. But so I find that there's a level of selfishness. We might say a narcissistic tendency because we have a word for it. But I don't think that Helen got the kind of love and attention from her parents that she needed. And I make a case that her mother Leda, she's kind of a cold woman, and she's cold because she's been raped by Zeus twice. She's fearful. Her husband doesn't want to have anything to do with her because he knows he's not the father of her kids. So there's sort of like that weird, like, I'm married to you, but you freak me out. And he doesn't really want to.
He probably blames her a little bit, even though it wasn't her fault.
Right? And then the idea of, like, if Zeus wants my wife, if I'm fucking my wife, is Zeus going to get mad at me? Like, you could just take that all kind of ways, right?
If Zeus wants her, Zeus is going to take her. Like,
right? Exactly. And so he's a little standoffish with Helen, and then Leda's standoffish with her because Leda's a survivor. She's traumatized. So she's a mother trying to raise kids with this, she's not in love with Zeus. The rape, this pisses me off when they show the depiction of Lita being raped by a giant swan, and they make it all sexual and romantic. Like, dude, if a giant swan attacked me and raped me, I would be traumatized. Like, there is nothing sexy about that. That is
No.
that right? So that's so
Oh
scary.
my gosh, there's knowledge in my head that I have to share with this, and it's so disturbing.
Oh gosh, please share.
Okay, I don't know if swan penises are like duck penises, but duck penises are corkscrewed. So if a swan penis is the same way or similar, that's horrifying.
Yes.
Horrifying.
Also, I don't know why I have that information in my head.
It just makes it just that adds a whole other level of oh my god to that.
Traumatizing.
That's
Oh, I know what it
awful.
is. It's the true facts about ducks. Have you guys ever seen those on
No.
YouTube? True facts about the
No.
sloths. They're
Ugh.
funny, but they give real facts. And if you ever get a chance, just go on YouTube, Google the true facts, and they'll come up about all different animals. They're very, very funny. They're well done. But that's what I took away from the duck one is they have corkscrewed penises.
That's hilarious.
That and that just adds a layer of a giant. I don't know. I'm gonna have to
That's
probably Google that now. But that's so morbid.
It is.
Ugh.
Hold on,
I'm
looking
like
it up.
crossing my
I need
arms,
to
like,
know.
oh, so not good.
Yes, they do. Swans also have corkscrew penises. Now we know.
Oh, I would imagine that whole situation for Lita because I envision these characters as humans, and what would it be like to have an immortal interact with you, where you can't refuse,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
and they're vengeful. The gods are assholes. They're not nice. They're not
Zeus raped like everybody.
right. There's that meme where if you take out Zeus's exploits, like Greek mythology, would be down to like a teeny skinny book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's
Right?
the one where it has the Zeus from the Disney movie Hercules, and it's like, Zeus, don't put your dick in this. And he's like, I'm going to put my dick in it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he did
That's
everybody.
Zeus. He did everybody. And he oh my gosh, so I envision that Helen just didn't get the attention or the nurturing that she needed. And so here comes this older guy because she's younger. I on purpose also for my books, I didn't make anybody under 18. But I think
Good.
mythologically,
But she probably could have been,
she
right?
probably was. When I first did the outline, it literally was working out to where like Penelope and Odysseus's wife and Helen, they were all like 15 or 16. I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So
But in that time
yeah.
frame, that wasn't rare.
right, that would have been normal. But I was just like, I can't write that in our modern.
No.
And it's sort of like Game of Thrones too, right? Like, Daenerys was 12 or 13, getting married off to
Right.
Khal Drogo, who we loved. But that whole first scene when they got married, like he rapes her.
Yeah.
And she's crying and he rapes her. But in the book, it would have been rape, but then she's 12.
Yeah.
That just, that's, I guess it's one thing when it's in a book, because when I read it, I think I missed that. I didn't catch it. And then it wasn't until I was reading afterwards and I realized, oh my God, that's true. Ew. That makes
It's
it
so
gross. It's gross.
Yeah.
So I didn't, I on purpose made characters a little older because I didn't want that. So I had Helen be, I think she's like 19 or 20, somewhere right in there, when Paris comes along. But mind you, Paris is middle 30s.
Yeah. So in reality,
Yeah.
she was more like 15 or 16 and he was mid 30s.
Still middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would have been about what in ancient Greece, that would have been normal, right? But anyways, but she was still young. So what would make a young mother who's the queen so dissatisfied with her life? And that would be the idea of that somebody loves me. somebody's paying attention to me,
Yeah.
and maybe that is how I can feel good on the inside.
It's just
Right?
a
And
cycle
so
that
that's
keeps
why,
happening from generation to generation.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think nowadays in the modern world we have a lot of labels that we identify things like psychologically, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that because we didn't have a label for something 3,000 years ago that traumas didn't affect human beings.
Yes. Yes.
So that's how I see Helen, as she's probably has narcissistic tendencies just out of her own need to satisfy her own needs for love and affection. And then that's why she goes with Paris. And not only does she go with Paris, but she takes half the treasury too of Sparta, because that was her dowry.
Yeah.
And Sparta belonged not to Menelaus, but Sparta belonged to Tyndareus, her father. And he gives up the throne for Menelaus to rule in Sparta so that it keeps Helen safe. So she's kind of a prisoner in Sparta as well. And at the wedding feast of Helen to Menelaus, all of the suitors, Patroclus was one of the suitors. He was old enough to be a suitor. And it's also known mythologically that Achilles was not old enough to be a suitor. So, yes, that's why he wasn't at the wedding feast. He's the only one who's fighting of all those princes, kings, generals who did not take the oath. They call it the oath of Tyndareus. So they all had to go before Tyndareus and promise that whoever Helen chose as her husband, if she was ever kidnapped again, that they would all go back. They would all back her husband, whoever she chose, and they'd all go to war. And that's why everybody went to war, because they all took an oath, and that Menelaus reminded all of them that y'all took an oath, because she did choose him. She chose him at her older sister Clytemnestra's behest, because Clytemnestra is married to Agamemnon, and so Clytemnestra and Helen are sisters married to a pair of brothers.
Okay.
So her sister kind of
gosh.
talks her into that. So it's like as deep
And
as drama, right?
Yeah, there's so much drama. They just glossed over so much of it.
They
but you
did.
couldn't fit it into a movie. You absolutely
Right?
couldn't.
Right.
No, you needed it to be like full on movie
Right?
parts.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. I feel like this is a topic that we literally could talk about for days on end.
Yeah,
Right.
just as long as like the movies, we say that it could be going on forever.
Exactly. There's so much to go into here. But for the sake of our listeners, we need to wrap this up for now because, if they're on their commute to work, I'm sure they're getting there by now. So,
yes.
Janelle, what's your takeaway from the movie Troy that you can share with us just to kind of sum it up for us?
Okay. So I think that the movie Troy does a really good job of sharing the mythology. And one of the things about mythology is that it can represent so many things to different people, whether you have a favorite character or a favorite theme or something like that.
Yeah.
The movie does satisfy a lot of the feelings that we want to have about the Trojan War and the characters. So there's good stuff there. And anything that keeps the mythology going,
Yes.
it's like it never ends. So you will always have new interpretations, new readings, and the movie Troy, even though I love to hate it, it's part of the chunk of films that I like to watch about Greek mythology, just because I like all of it. Even if I like some interpretations better than others, right? It's like certain translations of the Iliad or Odyssey I like better than others.
Right.
But I still like all of them. Does that make sense?
Because it's in that same realm, that same it gives you the feelings of it that you want,
right?
The
like
taste of it.
Like the retellings of all the fairy tales. Like I will just eat all of those up. Like especially if it's Alice in Wonderland.
Oh
like,
yeah.
every single one of them. Like, that's mine. I'm reading this.
Did you see? Did I see somewhere that they're doing a live some remake of Alice in Wonderland? Did I see that somewhere?
Yes. Where did I
Okay.
see
Another
that?
one?
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
They
yes.
just did
it's
Tim
like
Burton's.
it's like a live. It's like a live
I
action.
can't remember. I saw something about it.
Kind of like
Yes.
they did with The Little Mermaid.
They're doing another one with The Little Mermaid because they did one that wasn't Disney, but Disney's doing
Okay.
a live action Little Mermaid that's coming out.
Okay.
With oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the actress, but she's absolutely gorgeous. That is going to be playing her. It's a oh my gosh, what is her name? I'm gonna have to Google it yet again. This is like the third time in this show.
So while you Google that, I will just say that one of the things that I can appreciate a lot about the movie Troy was the costumes and the setting and just
Oh
giving us
yes,
the visual of the massive
I was looking at pictures because I
size.
haven't seen the movie. So I was
Oh.
like, I need to know what I'm looking at and talking
Yeah.
about. So yeah, the
Right.
costuming looked really good.
Yeah. The cinematography, the everything was very it was beautifully shot, I thought.
Yeah.
And there's the opening
Is
scene
that
too.
is it available to watch on
Yeah, it's on
anything?
Netflix.
Oh, it's on
Oh,
Netflix.
perfect.
Awesome.
It's on Netflix. So if y'all haven't seen it, it's on Netflix if you have Netflix. So
Check that
give it a
out,
go.
for sure.
Yeah.
The actress playing Ariel in the live action one, her name is Halle Bailey.
I don't know who that
Beautiful,
is.
beautiful actress.
Yes.
There was a lot of people that were upset,
Mm.
narrow-minded racists, because she is
Mm.
a beautiful Black woman, and they were upset that
Mm.
Ariel was going to be Black. But you know what? Yeah, exactly.
It's
She's
the
gorgeous.
it's the story. It's
Exactly.
the story.
Yeah.
It's the story.
Yeah.
So
So we're for that. Now, Janelle, what is your podcast? If people want to hear even more
Oh.
about Greek mythology, where can they find your podcast?
you can find my podcast on pretty much every platform that is out there. So it's Spotify, well,
Amazon,
Amazon. It's everywhere.
Apple.
It's everywhere. It's Greek Mythology Retold. So
Greek Mythology Retold.
Greek Mythology Retold. That's
Fantastic.
it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Janelle. This has been so much fun having you here.
Yes.
We worked around a few technical difficulties, but we made it happen.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I love an opportunity to talk Greek mythology anytime.
Awesome. Well, we will
Anytime,
have to get you
ladies.
back and dig in a little.
Yeah.
Maybe next time we'll go more into the TV show. The
Troy Fall of a City.
yes. We
Yeah,
need to. I
that's
need
a
to watch
good
that
one.
though. Where can you watch that one? Did you say BBC for that?
I'm pretty sure that's Netflix as well.
I'm gonna look for
Okay.
that one.
That
Yeah.
was a few years ago. I want to say maybe 2017. So
All right, we'll look for
Okay.
that.
yeah. So I think that Madeline Miller's book Circe has been optioned for an HBO series. So they're supposed to do like
awesome.
8 episodes of that. But again, they're just doing that time when Odysseus is her prisoner basically on her island.
Okay.
And it's not really the Odyssey, but that's only 8 episodes and like of her book that's a retelling. So I just wish somebody would take the whole damn book, the whole thing, and just
Just
make
just
like
do
10
the whole damn thing.
seasons. Just do the
There
whole
you go.
damn thing. Do the whole damn thing.
Beginning to end, we can do it.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you, and we'll have to have you on again sometime soon.
I would love it. I would love it.
All
Thank you so
right.
much, ladies. Appreciate it.
Yep. Until next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.